Hello again, everybody. This is Steve coming to you with another Intro to Writing video. This is on building magic and tech systems. Also, I will forewarn you if it's a little noisy in the background, forgive me. It's a nice day. I have the windows open, so you're going to hear the city behind me as I'm doing this. But anyhow, onward to the show. To begin all of this, I will start at point number one, which a lot of you may or may not ask yourself, is what is a magic system? Well, that's basically the structure and system under which supernatural, magic, or technology operates within your world. Of these, there are 4 different types of systems or elements that dictate how these function. The first one is a fixed magic or tech system. This is anything, technology or magic-wise that is unchangeable. Literally, nothing can change this no matter what. Example of this, in the Belgariad, you can't unmake something or you will die due to the magic blowback. In tech systems, this can be established laws of science, technology, or things where you can't change or bend the rules of that item in the slightest. It's literally set in stone, laws of physics, etc., etc., etc. It's literally A is A, B is B, it never changes. The next is flexible systems. These are something that, while not normally fixed, can be, while normally fixed, can be bent or fit, or can be bent to fit a need or a requirement. These are also items where, both in the case of magic and in technology, they operate in a, it operates normally by method A, let's say, which can't be changed except when modifier B is applied, thus turning method A into method C. Examples of this would be in Star Trek, The Next Generation, Voyager, and DS9. Warp 10 was believed to be a state of infinity, and if you went faster than that, you were suddenly everywhere at once. Don't ask me how that worked, but that's what they had in the show as canon. This was later revised and explained as a misunderstanding of how warp worked, which then allowed a later series and episodes and stuff to have ships that could go warp 13. And it wasn't a change in, well, it was a change in the scale, but it was also a change in how warp speed was understood, which then allowed you to do warp 13, warp 15, warp 20, and not hit that theoretical max limit. It also fixed that whole problem of 9.99999, the speed of, or warp speed or whatever like that. So basically it was, we kind of got that wrong, so here's our fix. That was, how they explained it, but it allowed them to take something that was locked in stone and then make it flexible by saying, basically, we got this wrong. So here's how, here's the corrected canon and how it works and stuff. So just ignore all the other stuff we said before. The third type is what's called, fuzzy rules. This is something that may or may not have an established system, method, or procedure of its own, where A plus B always equals C, but rather how that works, how it's applied, etc. It probably is going to be very undefined. Like you're going to come in there and in this situation, A plus B equals C. In the next one, A plus B equals D. And the third one, there is no B, you just have A equals C and stuff like that. It's real fuzzy how it functions. And this, this goes with what it does, how it works, its history, etc. Is it lost to history? Is it hidden in lore, etc. like that? And that goes, like I say, it goes for both tech magic, and magic. And I'll explain the differences of those later. This has a lot of flexibility in that, in that fuzzy flexibility option, but it's also a lot more dangerous to your story. Actually, it's very dangerous to your story because it can create unintended plot holes really, really easily. You might think, oh, that's easy, we'll just write our way out of this. Nah, maybe, but if you take the cheap way out, like you wrote yourself in a corner and you take the cheap way out, especially with like the the fuzzy systems and stuff, you could create a real problem for yourself. So you have to be very careful with the fuzzy stuff. It has to have, you're better at having either fixed or flexible. Fuzzy works when it's something that you can get away with, kind of, it just does the thing. I don't know how, it just does the thing. There are times you can get away with that, but you want to avoid that because, you got to remember that you're trying not to break the suspension of doubt. And with fuzzy system, with a fuzzy layout versus flexible and fixed, it's real easy to break that. A lot easier than you might think it is. Anyways, and the last one is going to be what are called hybrid systems. This is a blend of magic and technology that exists together in the same space. An example of this is Star Wars. You have on one side you have pure tech like lightsabers, starships, etc., droids, things like that, and then on the other you have the magic element, which is the quote unquote the Force, which I hate to break it to the Star Wars fans, but the Force is a form of magic. So, at least from the literary standpoint. But anyways, in that universe, magic and technology coexist side by side with each other and do it flawlessly. Hybrid systems are a fun one to play with. They're a little more difficult to work with than if you stay in your lane of just magic or just tech or even just tech magic. If you have the two of them sitting side by side to each other, you can very easily run into some problems. But if you do it right, it's an amazing way to write because you have these two different, completely, there are two completely different systems coexistent side by side with each other. And Star Wars did it right. Lucas did it right, I think. But it's like I say, at the same time, it's very easy to get it wrong. So, be careful how you handle that. That's just a little warning, because like I say, I've run into the same problems. So, hence the warnings. Anyways, point 2. What differentiates magic from technology? Well, the key takeaway on what differentiates magic from technology is the foundation that makes it work. Obviously, it's like real magic uses spiritual and supernatural forces, mana, spells, incantations, runes, tomes, etc. Technology itself uses science and physics and established laws of the universe and stuff like that. Tech magic's an interesting one because it kind of sits between the two of them. It's highly advanced magic that highly advanced technology that masquerades as magic. Goes along with something that Arthur C. Clarke once said, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that's where tech magic comes in, because I've seen this in a lot of movies. I've seen this in a lot of TV shows, anime, stuff like that, where I can look at something and they're acting like it's magic, but then I see all these key takeaways. It's like, no, that's tech magic. It's technology that is highly advanced and looks like magic. So, anyways, enough beating on that drum. Point 3. Excuse me. How to know or tell if it's real magic or tech magic. I figured to do this differentiation because it's easy to tell the difference between magic and technology. Now, magic and tech magic, not so much. But anyways, the difference between them, basically put, is if your system has an in-world HUD, or heads-up display, or some kind of holographic UI or something like that relies on hardware or implants to function, then it's tech magic. But if it's a magical interface tied to the soul, mind, or of divine origin, or something spiritual, it might qualify as real magic depending on how it's framed. Which I know it's like, wait, is it tech magic or is it not tech magic? Well, at that point in time, it's leaning towards regular magic because it's interfacing with the soul and the mind. It could be of divine origin and stuff like that. So now you're starting to flow into actual magic, even if technology is there. So, it's kind of funny how that some things are like black and white, some things are kind of fuzzy on where one ends and the other begins. Another way to tell if it's real magic or tech magic is if it has a mana system with it, but still has a HUD. If it has a HUD, even if it's using a mana system, I hate to inform you, but it's still classified as tech magic. And how is that possible? Well, mana doesn't have to be strictly connected with authentic magic. There is technology that can work with the human soul and spirit to achieve the desired end result using technology, aka tech magic. There's also the idea that the body is a channel of that energy, or a focus for that energy, or a focus for energy that comes from the vacuum, aka 0-point energy. That can be used via technology to create quote-unquote magic. Again, tech magic. As a further affirmation of this, the previously mentioned Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So if it's really easy, motorcycles. So it's really easy for a tech system to be so advanced that it's literally indistinguishable from authentic magic. You'll hear people repeat that a lot, trust me. Anyhow, point 4. How do I build my own tech or magic system? Well, you begin by asking yourself, what does this system need to do? In other words, what do you require of it? For stories that require authentic magic, elemental magic, etc. like that, you're probably going to be after something that works within the framework of the 7 magic types, namely Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, Light, Dark, and Spirit. The first 4, Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, are the obvious elemental forms of magic. Light and Dark are a tier above those, and they're sort of in the advanced category where you get into like deviant and special magic. You're dealing with things that, like, light magic's used a lot in healing, dark magic's used a lot in curses. Although I've seen them flipped where they've used good, light magic for bad things and dark magic light magic for bad things and dark magic for good things. So it's not a black and white thing. But the general rule is, light attributes and people with light magic are going to have healing, they're going to have restoration, stuff like that. People with dark magic are going to have, they're going to do curses, they're going to do all kinds of bad stuff with it. So, and the last one, spirit magic, that one would be something that is purely magic. There's very unlikely to be a tech system. I've seen only one instance where spirit blended with tech and was classified as tech magic, because the spirit like I said with regular magic, if it involves spirits, it's going to be regular magic, because the spirit interfaces with the ethereal realm, which is a level higher even than light and dark magic, and it's very much a traditional magic item. So you're not gonna you could have tech magic, but you're almost 99% certain to have regular magic in that case. For stories with hybrid magic, you'll want to determine if the 2 types will be blended together and coexist as a blended partnership, or if you need them separate and coexistent. Again, Star Wars is a great example of that, separate but coexistent magic. And if that won't work for you, you can do blended magic where they exist together as one unit, i.e. I have magic, I have tech, they both exist together in the same bottle, which you can do. It's a little tough to write it. I haven't been brave enough to actually try it, but it is possible to do that where you have the technology and the magic blended together. And one possible idea might be the technology makes the regular magic possible because it enhances something that, or if it doesn't make it possible, it makes it stronger. It's like a booster. Like Reincarnated as a Slime is a good example of this. That one's a blended system. It has magic via the power source, which they don't have mana. They have magicals, which is essentially kind of this ethereal, science-y type magic system. It's interesting how it works, but it's literally magic and technology blended together, but it's not tech magic. It's a hybrid. And, that's a good example. If you do it right, it's a really good storytelling metric and structure for your, for the story you're writing. But you can also screw that up pretty badly. So, again, and I warn you about these, that, you can screw them up really badly and ruin your story. Not to scare you, it's to make you aware so that you don't do that. If you're just going into it blithely like, oh, I can make this work, this shouldn't be any problem, and you're not going in with any caution, you're going to throw yourself under the bus and hate yourself afterwards. So I'm giving you the warnings up front so that you go in there going, okay, I can screw this up, so what do I got to do to make this right so I don't? So, anyways. For stories with pure technology, you'll need to decide what the technology is and what laws of science it either follows, fudges, or outright ignores. Which it can do that. It can either follow it perfectly, like, E equals MC squared, stuff like that. And then you could have something that just takes the laws of physics and literally just yeets them out the door. It's up to you. But again, you have to be able to support that in your story. So be thought or mindful of that when you're doing that. Another question to ask is: are you working with strictly science fact, science theory, science fiction, or which is something that only exists in fiction, which science fiction itself has neither touched or built plausible theories on, or possibly something else. You can also take any of those that I just mentioned and blend them together if you want to. Because again, you're the writer. This is your story. Be as creative and out of the box as you want to be. Be in the box as much as you want to be. Sit on the edge. It's your story. Just do what you want to with it. But again, be aware that these are out there and that these are things you're going to have to consider as you're building your system. One example of a pure technological system that uses both science fact and science fiction, as well as science theory, kind of uses all three, is in my Earthfleet series. I have the Portal Transporter, which is a transporter system that works on established scientific theory and proven science, centered around the theory and a proven theory, from what I understand, about that. Well, it centers around how do I describe this? It's not a law, but it's like a proven theory. It's called duality. Basically, there's a condition in nature where you can exist in two places at the same time. Don't ask me how that works. I just know that that's something that they've been able to prove. Which, don't ask me how they did that either. But hey, that's not my problem, right? The other thing it uses is portals and wormholes, which is actual established science. That is something that you could look in the textbook and it says, yes, this is proven physics. So duality by now may be proven physics, but last I knew it was a proven theory, but wasn't actually in the annals of proven science. So, but anyways, I digress. Basically put, while there's no working technology like that exists in our world currently that we know of, that system, the Portal Transporter in my book, is built on established theories and observations from science. So, theories and physics and other things like that. Another thing, once you've determined the magic or tech system you want to have, you'll need to move on to the simple matter of asking, what is the purpose of this magic/tech item that I want to include in my story? I.e., does it have a legitimate purpose in the story? If it doesn't have one, does it have a legitimate purpose in the story? If it doesn't have one, don't put it there. If it does, what is that legitimate purpose? Why does it need to be there? Does it serve a purpose, or are you just adding an ooh shiny? If you're wanting to add an ooh shiny, don't. Unless it has a really specific purpose in the book. Otherwise, you want it to be something that's practical, legitimate, moves the story forward. You don't want, sparklies and fluffy bunnies and all that kind of stuff. You want something that's going to be, the wrench in the hand of the mechanic. You want something that's going to have practical, applicable uses in the story. And if it doesn't have a story, just, it's dead weight and you want to avoid it. So, anyways, another question to ask is this thing I'm creating a single-use item, or will it have uses throughout the story? That's another one that you have to watch out for, is don't build single-use items unless it's absolutely necessary to push the story forward. You want something that's going to get used over and over and over again, which goes again back to the ooh shiny thing. You're not there for bling, you're there for something that has a practical purpose in the story. And if you look at all the great authors throughout history who, with a few rare exceptions, when they've built something that didn't have let me back that up. If you look at those authors, with rare exceptions, did you ever see them build something that didn't have a wider, deeper, broader use or need within the story? This is used over and over and over again. Or this has this application here, this has that application there, this buttresses this reinforces that kind of thing. So, for example, let's say you have someone who can do ice magic in a frozen mountain or who could do ice magic, but they live in a frozen mountain village, so that magic is completely impractical because in a frozen mountain village, you probably don't want ice magic. Now, that's not saying you shouldn't, because if you look at Avatar: The Last Airbender, they had water users that could use ice, and they were in the frozen Arctic. And there was there was a practical application to that. However, really though, if you're looking at it being truly practical, is to have an ice user that can wield the ice in the desert. I mean, you're out there in 110 degree temperatures and you're dying of heat and somebody's got ice ability. Oh, heck yeah, that's useful right there. That'll save some lives, make some water, keep you cool. Like you're trotting through the desert and it's like 120 degrees outside and your ice users over here going, they're like casting snow above you and it's causing it to evaporate and cool the air or rain down on you and keeps you cool while the sun's over there trying to burn you to death. Something like that. That's a practical use. No, again, going back to Avatar: The Last Airbender, okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I just think you want to get the maximum bang for your buck with that magical item that you put in there. So, now if we want to flip this over to sci-fi, let's say your character, your characters never leave the planet that they're on, let alone the star system they're in. If that's the case, why do they need starships with well-defined FTL drives or systems? You don't, unless there's some background need for that. If they're on the planet, even if it's sci-fi and they're not going anywhere, you don't need to define the FTL system. Now, if all you need is, they have warp drive, well, other people have already defined what warp drive is. If that's all you need, go for it. We have these ships come in and out all the time, and they travel by warp. And that's all you have to do. Because as soon as somebody hears warp, they go, "Oh, I know what that is," and you don't have to go any further. So that's one way you can still have that, but you don't have to go into detail. So, basically, it's established literary canon, so other people have done the heavy lifting, so that all you have to do is just put that word in there and boom, problem solved. So let's see, trying to think here. Okay, another question to ask yourself is, how much do I need to explain this system so the reader can understand how it works? Do I need to explain it a lot, a little, somewhere in between? The general rule when explaining a piece of technology is only explain it enough to make the story work. Like I've said in other videos, go crazy when you're designing something. Go into as much detail as you want. Get really minutiae in your details. Just go hog wild with it, with your characters, with your technology, all that. But the reason I say that is that part is for you to help you better visualize and write about those people, the places, the things, the technology, etc. For the reader, on the other hand, they only need about 1 to 10% of that detail. Anything more than that is info dumping and information overload, and that's a really fast and easy way to drive them away and force them to quit the books. So, just enough to get them through the story and nothing more. If you want to expound a little bit beyond that to add a little more color to the technology, go for it. But again, don't info dump, don't overload them. Give them just what they need and move on. And keep the rest of the stuff for yourself. Point 5, and final point, consistency. And I can't preach that enough. If you don't have consistency in your tech, your magic, or even really your story, you're either going to lose readers or you'll turn them off and they'll dump your story. That's not, and that's not something that's meant to inhibit your creativity. What I'm referring to is, if, for example, your starships all do warp 9 and then suddenly one of them can do warp 18, you better have a really good explanation why that's a thing and not just, well, I felt like it and it fits my need here. No. Just don't do that. Same with regular magic. You can't have a rune do one thing one moment and then something else another, unless you have a really good reason why it can. Such as it's a rune that responds to the will of the user and their magic type, therefore I can invoke this rune here and I can cast water magic. Well, then I can turn over here, re-invoke the rune, and it does fire magic. So you do water magic one way, fire magic another, it's the same rune. Well, why is that the case? Oh, well, this rune is not the actual, it's not a fire rune, it's just, it amplifies what my will is, and this is the magic I cast. Something like that. I'm being a little facetious on that, but you get the idea here. There has to be a reason why it can go outside of the normal. So that's what I'm getting at with consistency is Establish a normal, and if you need to go outside the normal, you better have a really good reason why. Anyhow, that's all there is for this episode. And yes, it sounds like I could go so much further with this, and I probably could. However, as with my other episodes in the series, this is just an intro to writing. It is not meant to get into the real meat and potatoes of writing. Some of that you have to learn on your own. That's why I don't go into those things. I'm here to get you started, but then you have to learn the rest on your own. I get you started on your journey, but from there, the rest of it is you walking the path from point A to point B. Now, that being said, if you feel like you need more and you want me to share more of the things I've learned, better ways to do things, how to get over certain problems, anything you want to talk about, let me know. I would be happy to do that. If we need to live stream, I've got a friend of mine who's got I'm trying to think of what it is. It's one of the live streaming services. But yeah, I could use his, and we could live stream it if you need to. If not, I could just work up a video like this, and I talk about it, share with you everything you need to know, and get you the next level up in being a better writer. So anyhow, that's all I have for right now. Appreciate you guys, and as always, and I hate saying this, and you know this, but for more people to be able to see this, including you, I just ask that you guys would like, share, subscribe, and comment, just so that the algorithm doesn't bury me like it loves to do. So anyways, see you guys later.